Yes, you are seeing double. I have two Sony SRF A100 FM AM stereo radios. The one on the left is mine. I've had it since the year 2000. It was a gift to me from the late Chris Cuff. And the one on the right was sent to me by Ben from Oddity Archive. You may have seen it in his recent video where he went on a road trip to find a couple of radio stations which are still broadcasting in AM stereo. And unfortunately, he was not able to hear stereo audio from either of them because this Sony is not working correctly. So I got in touch with Ben and I offered to fix his junk because I have a known working unit to compare it to. I have my own AM stereo transmitter.
The place for the most music variety. Most music variety. In stereo. In stereo.
And I have the service manual for it. And I hesitate to call this junk because it's in much better physical condition than mine. It has much fewer dents in the speaker grills, as you can see. And it also has the battery door where mine does not. And mine also has a little bit of a hole in the back, and to help identify it, mine has a glow-in-the-dark sticker on the top, where Ben's is in pristine condition on top. The SRF A100 was officially announced by Sony on April 13th, 1983. It had a suggested retail price of $89.95 US, but it was not readily available in stores until January 1984, when it was joined by its Walkman counterpart, the SRF A1, which basically has all the same features, just in a smaller package. So first, an example of the known working unit. This is a multi-system AM stereo receiver, because when this was introduced in the early 1980s, there were 4 different AM stereo systems in use. You can see here the A position was for the Harris, Magnavox, and Motorola systems, and the B position was for the Conn Hazeltine system. And of those 4 systems, the Motorola Sequom system eventually did become the standard. So here's the known working unit. I have it tuned to my own AM stereo radio station. Playing some music from the Backtracks audio library. And it is set to AM stereo mode, and the tuning indicator is lit. And you probably won't be able to hear much difference through the tiny built-in speakers, which are like 6 inches apart. I don't really understand why they made such a big deal about AM stereo and then put the speakers so close together you can't even hear it in stereo. So let me give you a direct connection. Also has wide and narrow bandwidth. And this is what is known as a forced stereo receiver. Because of all those different AM stereo systems that were on the air when this was introduced, it would be too expensive for it to try to detect each of them. So instead it just tries to receive everything as AM stereo, regardless if the station is actually broadcasting in stereo or not. So that is not actually a stereo indicator, that's just a tuning indicator, because it doesn't actually detect whether the station is broadcasting in stereo or not. It just decodes everything in stereo.
Tens of thousands in New Jersey still without power and air conditioning tonight. JCP&L says an outage was caused by a downed voltage line along Route 80 in Morris County, leaving 62,000 homes and businesses without electricity there. More than 3,000 PSE&G customers out in Bergen County, 353 in Essex, 668 in Passaic, just scattered outages in Middlesex, Union, and Hudson. WINS News Time 9:04, working to stop youth gun violence before it happens.
Now here's Ben's radio, and I have it set to AM stereo, but you notice there's no tuning indicator except if I switch to mono, then the tuning indicator appears. So that's mono. I don't hear any difference in stereo except the tuning indicator disappears. And that indicates there's something wrong with the AM stereo decoder chip in this. If we look at the block diagram of the SRF A100 receiver, it has a combined AM and FM receiver chip just like any other AM FM radio. And if you have it set to mono mode in AM, that chip is what drives the tuning indicator, so that's working. But if you switch it to AM stereo, it's actually the AM stereo decoder chip which drives the tuning indicator. So we're not getting any tuning indicator when we switch it to AM stereo. That means the problem is with the AM stereo decoder chip. Here's the basic circuit diagram of how that chip works. It's the Sony CX857. The tuning indicator LED is driven by pin 4, and that is connected to a lock detector, which detects when the voltage-controlled oscillator is able to lock onto the station you're tuned to. And that has a 3.6 megahertz oscillator coil, and that is adjustable. So I think that is what I'm going to try first, adjusting this coil to see if I can get it to lock onto the station and illuminate that tuning LED. And that's when it will be able to decode it in AM stereo, hopefully. The first step in taking it apart is to remove the knobs, which hopefully won't require too much effort. Also have to take out the power switch. A little yank of a pliers got that out. Now we can unscrew the back cover. Okay, now the back cover should pop off. And it comes off completely, which is good. And unfortunately, the adjustment we need to get to is on the opposite side of this board. There's one more screw to remove right here. I guess it's just going to stay there. And now, okay, may have to take out the batteries. And now this whole circuit board should carefully come out. And I think right there is that adjustment we need to make. Yep, it's L5, which is right there next to the tuning cord, which we thankfully do not need to unstring. The service manual has a procedure of connecting a signal generator and adjusting that coil for a specific voltage. But I'm going to try the simpler approach of just tuning in my own AM stereo station and tweaking that coil until hopefully it pops into stereo mode like it should. If we're not able to get it to do that by tweaking this coil, then we have bigger problems to deal with. But here we go. That's my own signal. If I put it in mono mode, you can see the tuning indicator light up. But in stereo mode, it goes out. Now I'm going to try adjusting this coil until it goes into stereo mode. That is a very stiff coil. Doesn't even feel like I'm adjusting it at all. Well, I tried several different implements to adjust that coil and I could not get it to budge. I don't know if they put glue in it when they put it in at the factory, but I didn't want to force it and possibly break it. And there's this other adjustment in the same metal box here, and this turns freely even with my plastic adjustment tool. But for some reason this one doesn't want to budge. And speaking of which, this stereo distortion adjustment should be set fully counterclockwise to give you the cleanest sound with the Sequam system, which is what became the standard and is the only system still in use today. And that's the way this one came, but my other SRF A100 must be an older one because it came set to the center position, which is a compromise between the Sequam system and the other systems. But I guess on later units like this, when it became clear that Sequam was by far the market leader, they changed it to adjust these for optimum results with the Sequam system. So if you have one of these, just check that this one over here is set fully counterclockwise. But I think I may have been barking up the wrong tree anyway, because the manual says to connect the signal generator and adjust it until you get a reading of 1.7 volts between pins 5 and 8 here. And if I do that, I get 1.7 volts pretty much. 1.69. So that is correctly adjusted, so that's not even our problem. Something else is wrong. The fault is more than likely due to, you guessed it, say it with me, bad capacitors. But you can see this thing is chock full of highly miniaturized surface mount components because Sony was at the forefront of that kind of thing in the 1980s. And I know that's not an insurmountable challenge. With magnified vision, a lot of patience, and a very fine tip on your soldering iron, that would be doable. But the problem is gaining access to that AM stereo decoder chip. It's on its own little separate circuit board, which is inside this metal shielding can. So in order to get to it, we would need to remove this can. And in order to remove the can, we would need to remove this plastic frame. And in order to remove this plastic frame, we would need to remove the tuning dial cord. So you need to basically unbake the layer cake to get to it. I don't know if even 12 volt vids would be willing to do a job like this. This is a case where the effort to repair exceeds the value of the radio. So what I've told Ben is that if he really wants to get this working in AM stereo again, what he should try to do is find one of these that's in rough cosmetic condition but is fully functional. And since this one is in such good cosmetic condition, he could swap the internals with the working one. That's easy. All you need to do is just unsolder and then reattach the speaker wires and the wires going to the battery contacts. That's easy. And then that would get him one of these that's fully functional and in this really nice looking case. I mean, it has one little dent there, but that's minor. Or he could just leave it as is because, as you saw, it's still perfectly functional as a high fidelity, very sensitive and good quality mono AM tuner.
Whatever your solution is, you'll find it at Floor Solutions. Located on Main Street, on the corner of Main and East Plain. Open 7 days a week, or browse the entire Shaw catalog 24 hours a day at floorsolutionsnj.com.
This afternoon in the Jersey Lottery, pick 3, 095. Pick 4, 6062. Happy Arbor Day. Go and do something nice for a tree today, okay?
I'm coming home, I've done my time.
And FM stereo, of course. So realistically speaking, there's not that many AM stereo stations left. So most of the time you would be listening to mono AM stations on this anyway. So it's no big loss. But I didn't want Ben to come home with no ability to receive AM stereo, so I found this in my own junk drawer. It's an Ando SS100 AM stereo little Walkman type radio. It's only AM, and it is AM stereo, and it was sold in the Japanese market, as you can tell. This is from around 1992, when they were first introducing AM stereo in Japan using the Sequam system. The original price was 8,500 yen, and I like that AM stereo new. And the box is kind of falling apart. I also no longer have the little earbuds it came with, but they sounded terrible. Here's the warranty card. Maybe someone can put this through Google Translate. Here's the manual. Stereo AM. Specifications: 530 to 1600 kilohertz, 28 milliwatts output, runs on 2 AAA batteries, as you can see there. And there is some English here. The switch on the right side switches between off AM mono and AM stereo. And the switch on the left side switched between the headphone output and the built-in speaker. But I didn't see the point of having a tiny, mono, terrible sounding, pipsqueak little speaker and an AM stereo receiver, so I removed it. So now it's strictly the headphone output in stereo. You get your volume control and tuning dial. It's a manual tuning. It's a little bit fiddly, but it's not too bad. And like I said, the first position is mono. Second position is stereo. It doesn't sound quite as good as the Sony. It's not as wideband, but it's still very sensitive. It even says on there, super sensitive tuner. And the big advantage of this one is that it is not a forced stereo receiver. It uses the Motorola MC13024 AM stereo Sequam decoder chip, which was their attempt to get Sequam AM stereo into low-cost radios like this. And the big advantage of that is that it has a pilot tone detector which only switches into stereo mode when it detects a station broadcasting in AM stereo. And the way you can tell that is when the tuning indicator gets brighter. I'll switch it into stereo mode. And there, you can see it just got brighter because it's now receiving my transmitter in AM stereo. So that little indicator is a big advantage when you're hunting for AM stereo stations out in the wild. With the Sony, you would just need to sit and listen and wait for them to actually broadcast something in stereo. And if it's a talk station, that could take quite a while. Whereas with this, you can see right away when that LED gets brighter, you know you found a station broadcasting in stereo, even if they're not actually transmitting anything in stereo at the moment. But that MC13024 Sequam decoder chip has one fatal flaw, and that is it's sensitive to movement, and it drops to mono when you pick it up and move it around, which is what you would naturally do with a portable radio like this. People carry it around, they go jogging with it, and this would be constantly dropping to mono if you actually did that.
We're on the same team.
You see it's in stereo.
Think before you strike.
Every time I give it a little tap, it drops out to mono. It's fine if you just sit and leave it alone. It works fine. But if you're moving this thing around, it's going to be dropping out to mono. So this is my gift to Ben to give him some ability to receive AM stereo in case he ever decides to go on another road trip. And now finally, the moment you've been waiting for. I'll present to you a direct hookup sample of the Oddity Archive channel's theme song, Pavand, featured in Motorola Sequam AM stereo as received by the Ando SS100 radio. Stay tuned to this channel and others for more exciting AM stereo related content in the near future. But for now, I'll leave you with a clip of when CFRB, the radio station in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, officially started broadcasting full-time in AM stereo on July 30th, 1984. I'll have the full recording available on my other channel. I'll include a link to it. Unfortunately, I only have a mono recording of their first stereo broadcast, but they specifically mentioned this Sony SRF A100, as well as its Walkman counterpart, and also the Sansui CX990, which was the first car radio to have AM stereo. CFRB had 3 of the first prototypes of it.
And tell us what stereo is all about, and you know how many sets we have in this area, for instance?
I can't tell you how many were sold. Sony, I can tell you, are the one manufacturer with home model sets. They're the only ones on the market now. They have 2 sets. One is a table model with headphones. It's portable. The other one is the Walkman. That's almost becoming a generic term, but it is a Walkman type with AM stereo. There is one car radio on the market now. We have the first 3, the prototypes, Sansui, Cromer Radio on Bathurst to put ours in, Anybody who sells Sansui can tell you about that one.